I'm Evelyn, 34, a software engineer by profession, a problem solver by nature. And if you ask my family, the default emergency contact for everything from car breakdowns to emotional meltdowns. Growing up, I was the quiet one. The helper, the one who memorized grocery prices, set the dinner table, and learned how to do my own laundry at age 8, not because I had to, but because no one else would. My parents praised my independence as if it were an innate gift, not a coping mechanism. You've always been so mature. Evelyn, they'd say with a smile. Meanwhile, my younger sister Ruby, 2 years behind me, was the delicate orchid they sheltered from every gust of wind. She got excuses, I got expectations. When Ruby forgot her homework, the teacher was blamed for not being clearer. When I forgot mine once, my parents asked if something was wrong with me. That's how the roles were written, Ruby. The adored, Evelyn, the dependable. I didn't resent it then. I thought that's just how families worked. Through sheer determination and way too many sleepless nights, I earned a full scholarship to MIT. While Ruby bounced between majors and travel gaps to find herself, I built code and climbed ladders. At 29, my startup was acquired. My name was suddenly followed by a net worth that made my accountant blink. I still lived modestly, a tidy one-bedroom in Seattle, a reliable hatchback, and a ritual of brewing my own coffee, but to my family. I had become something else, a vault with legs. It started subtly. Dad's old car finally gave out. I helped with the down payment. Mom's part-time hours at the clinic were slashed. I covered the mortgage for 3 months. When Ruby's toxic boyfriend kicked her out, I wired over first and last month's rent without hesitation. They all said thank you, but over time, thank you turned into, well, you can, can't you, and you're so lucky to be in tech. Gratitude faded into entitlement like mist dissolving under morning sun. Then came the engagement announcement. Ruby called, squealing, her voice syrupy with excitement. Her fiancé, Caleb, was a dream handsome, successful, and born into a family that hosted charity galas as casually as Sunday brunch. He proposed at sunset on a sailboat. She whispered like a movie heroine, "And I want you by my side every step of the way." I smiled. I said I'd help. At first, I thought she meant advice or maybe a dress deposit, but the steps quickly became bank transfers, a venue, a caterer, a photographer. Somehow, the fairy tale had a $120,000 price tag, most of which quietly migrated to me. No one asked how I felt, only how fast I could wire the next payment. They didn't see me, only what I could give. And still, I paid, because I thought love meant showing up, even when no one saved you a seat. I kept paying, because I thought love meant showing up even when no one saved you a seat. But over time, I began to notice that not only was I not being saved a seat, I wasn't even being told what room the table was in. At first, I chalked it up to scheduling conflicts. My job as a lead developer kept me busy, back-to-back meetings, late-night sprints, and code freezes that couldn't be moved. So when Ruby said I had just missed the cake tasting or that it didn't make sense to loop me in on floral design meetings because I was always working, I tried to be understanding. I reminded myself I was doing this out of love. I told myself she didn't mean to exclude me, but patterns have a way of speaking louder than words. Every brunch to meet the decorator during my product launches, every boutique appointment for the dress slotted into my critical sprint reviews. I offered to join via FaceTime. "It's too hard to manage that," Ruby would say breezily. "It's fine, we've already put down the deposit anyway." I wasn't just being left out, I was being erased. I found out about the centerpiece decisions through a group text between Ruby and her bridesmaids, accidentally forwarded to me. I wasn't in the bridal party. Ruby had said she didn't want to burden me with extra responsibilities, considering how much I was already doing. At the time, I had appreciated the sentiment. But looking at that thread, where they discussed color palettes and seating charts like I didn't exist, it didn't feel like a kindness, it felt strategic. I decided to test the waters. There was a menu tasting scheduled on a Tuesday evening. Initially, Ruby had told me not to worry about attending, it was just a casual tasting, and she didn't want to pull me away from work. But that afternoon, one of my meetings got canceled. I grabbed my coat and drove to the venue. The moment I walked into the dining hall, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Ruby sat at the far end of the long table, flanked by our mother and Caleb's mother, Veronica. Everything about Veronica said legacy and power, from the pearl necklace that probably had a name to the way she surveyed the staff like she was inspecting a private gallery. Ruby's smile froze when she saw me. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. "My last meeting was cancelled," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Thought I'd join after all." Veronica's eyes flicked over me, my practical flats, my laptop bag, the hint of fatigue I carried from a full day at work. "Oh," she said, shaking my hand with fingers like ice. "Ruby didn't mention you'd be joining us. It was a last-minute decision," I replied. Ruby jumped in before I could say more. "Evelyn's just super busy with her tech stuff. Mom and I have been handling most of the planning." So much for being by her side every step of the way. I sat down, uninvited but determined. The rest of the evening passed like a play in which I'd missed every rehearsal. Veronica criticized the sea bass as common and insisted on a lobster risotto that required a surcharge. Ruby agreed instantly. Our mother nodded like a metronome. No one asked for my opinion, not even on the cost. When the tasting ended, I pulled Ruby aside. "What was that?" I asked, trying to stay calm. I felt like I was crashing someone else's wedding. Ruby sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "Veronica has incredible taste. She's done this before for both of Caleb's sisters. I want her to feel included, more included than the person paying for the entire thing." Her jaw tensed. "Is that what this is about now? The money? Are you going to hold that over my head forever?" Before I could answer, our mother stepped in like she'd been waiting in the wings. "Girls, enough. Evelyn, your sister is under a lot of pressure. The last thing she needs is guilt." I backed down. I always did. A few days later, I stopped at a cafe near Ruby's apartment. As I waited in line, I heard her voice coming from the back corner. She was sitting with her best friend, Lila, the maid of honor I was never asked to be. "Evelyn's being a total control freak," Ruby said, loud enough for the entire corner to hear. "Just because she's paying doesn't mean she gets to dictate everything." "It's my wedding," Lila giggled. "At least you're getting the dream without debt." "Worth it, even if she's a bit much." Ruby sighed. "Sometimes I wish she'd just send the money and disappear. She's making everything so complicated with her spreadsheets and questions." I left without ordering. I spent the next hour parked on a side street, staring at the dashboard, trying not to cry. The spreadsheets I made, the ones she mocked, had kept her dream wedding from unraveling. The questions I asked were about invoices and deposits, nothing unreasonable, but somehow I had become the villain in her fairy tale. And still, I told myself I was overreacting. That families say things they don't mean, until the spa day. I found out about it from my cousin Mia's Instagram story. Ruby and 6 other women in white robes, sipping champagne in a posh spa lounge, spoiling our bride-to-be, Ruby and Caleb forever. The caption read, I stared at the photo for a long time. I wasn't tagged. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't even known it was happening. And that's when I realized I wasn't just being excluded from the details. I was being excluded from the story. I had already accepted being left out of the bridal party, the tastings, and even the spa day. But nothing prepared me for what came next. I thought I could swallow the exclusion in small doses, keep the peace by staying quiet, and just make it through the wedding. But sometimes the truth doesn't crack gently. It snaps. All at once. The message came during one of the most important meetings of my career. I was standing in front of the executive team, walking them through the security implementation timeline for our newest client. It was a high-stakes presentation, months in the making. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. At first, I ignored it, but the repeated vibration made something in my chest tighten. I paused, excused myself briefly, and stepped into the hallway. I checked my phone. 3 messages. All from my mother. Evelyn, we need to talk about the wedding. There's been a change of plans. Ruby doesn't want you there. My body went cold. I read those words over and over, trying to make sense of them. A 4th message arrived. She feels you've been too controlling and making the wedding about yourself. James's parents are offering to help, but only if there's no family drama. The breath left my lungs. I found the nearest restroom and locked myself inside a stall. My hands trembled as I opened the final message. Ruby needs this day to be perfect. Please understand and respect her wishes. Respect her wishes. I had funded this wedding. I'd wired money for the venue, the catering, the photographer, the band. I'd answered late-night calls about linen colors and centerpiece emergencies. And now, I wasn't invited. I was being cast aside like an inconvenience, like an embarrassment. I dialed my mother immediately. She answered on the second ring. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling but controlled. She sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Evelyn, I know this is upsetting, but Ruby is under so much pressure. James's parents are finally warming up to her, and she can't risk anything going wrong. And I'm something that could go wrong," I asked. There was a pause, that horrible kind of pause that says everything no one wants to say. Patricia mentioned she's worried about family tension overshadowing the day. My mother finally said, "Apparently Ruby told them there were disagreements between you two." Disagreements. My voice was barely a whisper. "You mean I asked where my money was going? She may have implied you've been having some emotional struggles," my mother said quietly. "That your success has taken a toll on you." I closed my eyes. My sister hadn't just excluded me. She'd rewritten the story entirely. Now I wasn't the sister who stepped up when no one else could. I was the unstable one. The problem. "Did you defend me?" I asked. Silence. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I wasn't just disappointed anymore, I was done. "Tell Ruby," I said, my voice calm in a way that frightened even me, "that if I'm not welcome at the wedding, then neither is my money." "Evelyn, don't be vindictive." "I'm not being vindictive," I interrupted. "I'm setting a boundary that should have been there from the beginning. If James's parents can contribute $50,000 on the condition that I'm out, they can contribute the other $100,000, too." "You can't do that," she gasped. "Everything's paid for. The wedding is in 3 days, actually," I said evenly. "Most vendors don't require final payment until 72 hours before the event." "I know. I read the contracts." Her voice cracked. "Please just think this through." "I have," I said, "for years. I've thought about how to earn this family's respect. But now I realize I was aiming at a moving target. Tell Ruby she has a choice. Either I attend as the sister who made her wedding possible, or she pays for it herself." I hung up and sat there in the restroom stall, staring at the chipped tile floor, the adrenaline buzzing through me like static. My heart pounded, but my mind had never felt so clear. When I returned to the conference room, I apologized for the interruption and finished my presentation with the same precision I'd always delivered. No one knew that, just minutes earlier. I'd been told by my own family that I was no longer welcome. That night, I pulled out every wedding contract, invoice, and planning document I had meticulously stored. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I made a list vendors with unpaid balances, services that could still be canceled for partial refunds, expenses already lost. My fingers moved across the keyboard with calm resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. The illusion had shattered. The role I'd played for decades of the dependable one, the fixer, the invisible backbone was gone, and I had no intention of stepping back into it. I didn't cry after I hung up the phone. I didn't scream or throw anything, or spiral into self-doubt like I might have done in the past. Instead, I opened my laptop, sat at my dining table, and began the methodical, quiet process of taking back what was mine. The wedding may have been in 3 days, but the illusion that I owed anyone anything had ended the moment they decided I wasn't worthy of attending. The first call I made was to the Griffin Hollow estate, the venue I had booked 6 months earlier with a $25,000 deposit. I had spent hours negotiating that contract, reading every clause, every footnote. I remembered the fine print clearly full refund unavailable, but cancellations made more than 72 hours prior to the event would be eligible for a partial refund or reassignment. When the event coordinator, Chelsea, answered. Her voice was cheerful. "Evelyn, big day coming up." "Huh, actually," I said evenly. "I'm calling to cancel the event." There was a pause on the line, just long enough to acknowledge the shift in tone. "Oh, I see. May I ask why my sister has uninvited me from the wedding I paid for, under the circumstances? I'm no longer in a position to fund the event. She didn't ask for more. To her credit, she remained professional, even kind. I'm sorry to hear that. Evelyn, I'll process the cancellation paperwork immediately. You'll receive a 25% refund of your deposit, and the reservation will be marked open unless reassigned by another paying party. I thanked her, hung up, and moved down my list. The caterer, the florist, the rental company, the DJ, the bartenders, the shuttle service. One by one, I called each vendor, explained the situation in the most neutral way possible, and requested cancellations or withdrawals of payment. Most were sympathetic. A few already knew something had happened. One even said gently, "Honestly, good for you. The photographer offered me a larger refund than outlined in our contract," whispering. I've seen this before. Families using the one who has the money like a blank check. You're doing the right thing. By late afternoon, I had cleared nearly $65,000 in scheduled payments. Not all of it was recoverable. Some deposits were gone for good. But I didn't see it as a loss. I saw it as tuition for the most important lesson of my life. The final step was digital. I logged into the collaborative wedding planning site. I had built custom dashboards, shared calendars, timelines, contracts, vendor contacts, design boards. I downloaded everything from my personal records, then deleted the entire site. When the last file vanished, I felt a weight lift. That's when Ruby called. I stared at the screen for a moment, debating. Then I answered. Her voice came through sharp and cracked. "How could you do this to me, correction?" I said calmly. "I canceled the wedding you told me I wasn't invited to." "You're ruining my life because of your ego," she sobbed. "You're jealous. Mom said you were having a breakdown, now I see it." "No, Ruby, I'm finally having a breakthrough. James's family is going to think we're insane. What am I supposed to tell them?" I took a breath. "You could try telling the truth. That you lied about me to protect an image. That you used me for money and cut me out once it no longer served your narrative. I never asked you to pay for everything. You accepted it. Repeatedly. With enthusiasm. And not once did you say no." She started yelling again, then switched to crying. "You're destroying everything. You destroyed it the moment you decided I wasn't family enough to be there." Then came the threat I knew was coming. "Mom and Dad are going to talk to a lawyer. You can't just pull out." I let out a laugh, short and exhausted. "Sue me for canceling services I paid for. Good luck with that." "This isn't over," she hissed. She was right, but not in the way she meant. An hour later, my parents called. I let it go to voicemail. Dad's message was angry, accusing me of sabotaging the most important day of Ruby's life. Mom's voice was tearful, pleading with me to reconsider before it's too late. I sent one final message to our family group chat. "If I'm not family enough to be there, then pay for it yourselves. I'm done being your ATM." Then I blocked every number and email that had drained me for years. The next morning, I packed a weekend bag, powered down my work phone, and drove 3 hours northwest past the city, past the suburbs, past the guilt. I checked into a quiet lakeside cabin I had found weeks earlier but never allowed myself to book. It had no Wi-Fi, no TV, just tall trees, shifting water, and silence. For the first time in over a decade, I allowed myself to sit with everything. The resentment, the shame, the exhaustion of being the dependable one, the unthanked one, the invisible one. I wasn't running away. I was stepping back, reclaiming space, rebuilding something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Myself. The cabin gave me space to breathe, but it didn't make the pain disappear. Solitude isn't a cure, it's a mirror. In the stillness, I saw things I had tried to ignore for years, the patterns, the roles, the way I had been reduced to a credit line with a smile. But as I drove back to the city, something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt the need to explain, to defend, or to fight for space at a table that was never built for me. I returned to Seattle the day before what would have been Ruby's wedding at Griffin Hollow. By then, of course, there was no Griffin Hollow. From what little information trickled through mutual acquaintances, the ceremony had been relocated last minute to James's family's country club, a watered-down version of the event I had once meticulously planned. No string quartet, no elaborate floral arches, no gourmet tasting stations, just white tablecloths, a hastily assembled dinner, and half the original guest list. I didn't go online that day. I didn't check Instagram, didn't read Facebook posts, didn't look for updates, but that didn't stop them from finding me. Ruby posted a photo of her in a simple satin gown, mascara streaked and holding back tears. The caption read, "Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears your last name." My mother posted a vague message asking for prayers during this difficult time. Friends and distant cousins messaged me, some with concern, some with questions, a few with judgment thinly veiled in curiosity. I said nothing. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't correct the narrative. I knew what Ruby was doing, painting herself as the victim, rewriting the story to fit her discomfort, and I knew how hungry people were for drama they didn't understand. But silence, I realized, could be its own kind of thunder. The people who truly knew me reached out differently. My best friend, Lena, brought over Thai food and wine, curled up on my couch, and listened as I unraveled months, no years of exhaustion. My colleague, Mark, invited me to dinner with his husband and their three-legged dog, where no one mentioned weddings or family, just life, joy. The quiet steadiness of people who choose you without obligation. I started therapy with Dr. Elaine Chin 2 weeks after the non-wedding. In our very first session, I used the word overreaction 5 times. She gently asked, "Whose standard are you measuring your reactions against?" I didn't have an answer. By the 3rd session, we were mapping family roles on a whiteboard. She drew boxes: caretaker, princess, fixer, avoider. She showed me how families build stories to survive, and how dangerous those stories become when no one is allowed to rewrite them. "You weren't valued for who you are," she said, "but for what you could provide. And that's not love, it's function." Her words sat heavy in me, but they also clarified what had always been fog. That fall, as the holidays crept in, I made choices that once would have been unthinkable. I didn't go to Thanksgiving, I didn't send regrets. I simply volunteered at a community dinner for international students and tech workers spending the day far from their families. I helped serve turkey and mashed potatoes to strangers who, like me, were quietly reimagining what togetherness meant. Christmas came with daily voicemails from my mother. "It's time to come home," she said in one. "Family is family. Evelyn." But I didn't go. I mailed gifts. I sent polite but brief messages. And I spent Christmas Eve with Lena's family, drinking cocoa by the fireplace while her niece showed me how to draw snowflakes with glitter glue. It was the most peaceful holiday I'd had in a decade. In January, the cracks in Ruby's version of events began to show. My cousin Nate reached out unexpectedly. He told me Ruby had once borrowed money from him, $3,000, to start a business she never followed through with. She never repaid him. A few days later, my aunt, my dad's sister, messaged me privately. "I wanted to tell you something." She wrote, "Ruby lived with us rent-free for 6 months after college. Told your parents she was paying full rent?" I stayed silent back then. I shouldn't have. Others followed, one by one. People started revealing their own quiet betrayals. Small favors never returned. Emotional manipulation swept under the rug. A pattern emerged clear, undeniable. The image of Ruby as the fragile, misunderstood golden child began to crumble, and with it, the guilt I had carried for so long. She hadn't just hurt me. She had used the same tactics with others, always wrapped in charm, always justified by some version of Ruby needs more help. And our parents, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of love poorly expressed, had enabled it. But the difference now was that I had stepped away. I wasn't at the center of the chaos anymore. I wasn't funding it. I wasn't absorbing the damage. I was watching from a safe distance, and for the first time, I saw it all for what it was. My absence from that wedding didn't cause a rupture. It revealed one that had always existed. The pattern had been exposed. The silence had been broken. And now, finally, space began to open. Real space, not one I had to pay for or prove I deserved, but one I had created by walking away. That space allowed truth to surface, and people, slowly, to return in different forms. My mother reached out first, not with excuses, not with pressure, but with a quiet request. "Can we talk?" I agreed, carefully, with clear boundaries. We met in a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. She looked older than I remembered, like the weight of everything she hadn't said had finally caught up with her. I thought we were doing what was best, she said, hands wrapped around her coffee cup. You were strong, Ruby, needed more help. I nodded. Being strong doesn't mean I deserved less. She didn't argue. She listened. We met again a few weeks later. Then again, slowly. Something new began, no longer a dynamic of duty and silence, but one of cautious respect. I didn't forgive everything, but I allowed space for change. Then came the letter. Ruby's handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. Inside was a card, no embellishments. No pretense. I hurt you. I know that now. I'm sorry. Can we talk? We met in another cafe, different this time. Warmer. She looked stripped down, divorced now, no longer playing the part of someone else's idea of perfection. Her words weren't polished. They were real. I thought love was about being adored, she said, and I thought being adored meant being impressive. That's what James's world taught me. But it hollowed me out. I listened. I didn't let her off the hook. But I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes, self-awareness. For the first time, she didn't try to charm or justify. She just owned it. I told her what I needed: consistency. Truth. No performance. She said she was ready to try. We're not close again, not yet, but we're no longer pretending. Meanwhile, I've quietly built a life that doesn't orbit anyone else's approval. I've started dating someone who doesn't flinch when I draw lines, who never asks me to shrink to be easier to love. In his presence, I don't feel useful, I feel seen, and that's enough. No one gave me permission to reclaim my voice. I had to choose it. I had to sit in the dark, name the hurt, and step forward anyway. I no longer confuse endurance with love. I no longer measure my worth by what I can offer or how quietly I can carry pain. My value was never a product of their acceptance. It existed before they saw it, and it remains whether they see it now or not. As I closed the cafe door behind me, the winter air met my face. I didn't flinch. I walked toward the street, no fanfare, no applause, only the solid echo of my own footsteps. For the first time, they were enough. True worth doesn't require recognition, and dignity cannot be taken, it can only be claimed.